Hello and welcome to Dyson Demons. I'm Emma, and in this video I'm going to show you how far I have gotten so far with my project of making stained glass windows. This one is themed obviously for 40K, but you can make this in all sorts of styles. So this is just it's sort of a test piece, and once I figure out exactly how I want to do this, I think I will make more because the process is in and of itself is actually pretty fun and pretty creative. So if you're interested in seeing how this was done, watch this video. If you want to know exactly how the frame was done, you can go back and check out another video where I showed how I designed the frame and how it was cut out using a laser cutter. I will leave a link to that in the show notes below. So I start out with a frame that I sprayed just using a black spray primer. And then I take a piece of clear plastic. It's relatively thin but still sturdy, as you can see here. And then I just quickly draw an outline around the frame so that I have something when I'm going to be cutting out the piece of plastic. And I'm just cutting it out relatively roughly because it doesn't need to be precise, it just needs to cover the back of the frame. So I try to just cut in a little bit so that I'm sure it won't go over the edge of the frame because I don't want it to be visible from the front. And then I just make sure that it fits. And there is a little tiny inaccuracy, so I just quickly cut that back to shape to make sure it fits nice and snugly. Then I use some ordinary PVA glue on the back of the frame. I'm going to be using PVA glue because when it dries relatively clear, and I know that PVA glue is not the strongest glue you can get, but as I'm going to be using Mod Podge on the front of the frame, it doesn't need to hold a whole lot of thing because the Mod Podge will help with that as well. I am careful that it covers the entire surface though, because I don't want to have any sort of cracks between the frame and the acrylic sheet of plastic. Just because I don't want the colored Mod Podge to run all over the place. So that's also why I have now glued the plastic in place, and then I put it on a sheet of cardboard, and then I put some heavy books on top to make sure that it fits as well as I can possibly make it do. So that's why it's really nice to have nice thick history books. Then I take the Mod Podge. This is not exactly Mod Podge, actually. It's a cheap Danish brand, but it does approximately the same thing. And then I mix it with some contrast paint. I'm mixing this with Talosar Blue, and I've never done this before, so I don't know exactly how much paint to put in, compared to the Mod Podge and stuff. So this is just really sort of touch and go thing. I take a look at it and see, well, how do I think this will look when it's done? I have cleaned up some empty paint pots. I always save my empty paint pots because then if I do a new mix of some sort, then I have somewhere to put it. And I put the Mod Podge mixture in there. I've decided to make a bunch of different colors. So I'm doing one that's blue, one that's green, as you can see here. And it's a mixture of Warp Lightning and the Tesseract Glow. I am only using colors that are relatively transparent when they dry because I don't want the surface of the paint to look sort of opaque so that you can't see through it. The other green paint I'm mixing here is again Warp Lightning and then some Reikland Flesh Shade. And I wanted it to be a little bit darker so that the two green colors would stand out from each other, hopefully. And you never know. I've never done this before, as I said. Then I mix up another batch with some Blood Angels Red, and I mix up a yellow batch using the Yandon Yellow, again the contrast paints, making sure only to use transparent colors. Then I'm using some Reikland Flesh Shade here. And lastly, I mix up one that I hope will end up looking sort of grey, and I use Black Templar for that. I'm sure you could probably also use inks and all sorts of other things for this, but I just have the contrast paints on hand, so that's why I chose to use them. And then I use... I've decided to use droppers to apply the Mod Podge mixture to the frame. I'm sure I could have used brushes, and perhaps it would even have been a little bit better just because it was... I did not really have a really great amount of control over how much Mod Podge mixture I actually applied to the frame using the droppers. On the other hand, if you use a brush, you might easily, lose a little bit of Mod Podge, and it could flow into an opening where I didn't want it to go. So I don't know if this is the best tool available, or if I can come up with something else. I'm not quite sure, because I would like to have a little bit more control, or perhaps it's just, getting used to using a dropper. I've never really worked with them before. I just had them on hand and thought that was probably the way to go. As you can see, it's a little bit difficult sometimes to get the Mod Podge mixture into it, especially the really tiny holes in the frame. It was, when I designed it, I didn't really think about how practical it would be. I just thought about what would look cool, and was completely blown away by the fact that I had actually access to a laser cutter who could do like really tiny nice things. So perhaps when I design another one, I will have practicality a little bit more in mind. I don't know. However, I do think this looks cool, and I think it's definitely usable. It just takes a little bit longer actually than I expected it to. It's not bad at all. I think I spent about, I don't know, did I spend about 30 minutes or so actually applying all of this, all in all. So from start to finish, that's not bad. It takes way longer for it to dry, that's for sure. The drying part really tested my patience. As you can see, I did have a little bit of spillover from the yellow and blue, but I could relatively easily clean that up. So I don't think you need to be really, really anxious if you actually make a mistake. You can get it up and fix it, as long as you find out quickly that it's an issue. I actually found this work a little bit, while it was a bit repetitive, it was also almost like meditation or something. It was quite relaxing, and I really enjoyed it. I had fun with it. So this is definitely something I'll be doing again. Once I had put all the Mod Podge in, there was nothing left for me to do than to leave it to dry. I'm really impatient, so that was definitely the hardest part. I could not leave it alone, but eventually I managed to leave it overnight, and this is what it ended up looking like once it was done. You can see the left one, that is what it looks like when held up against the light, and on the right you can see what it looks like just on its own, held up against a white piece of paper. And I really do think it sells the illusion of stained glass really, really well, and I'm really pleased with it. It has been a fun, although very long learning process, and I'm excited to do more. I'm very, very interested in knowing what you think. Do you think it looks cool? Do you think it's a lot of work for something that doesn't look as great as you might have hoped? What are your thoughts? Do you have any ideas for how I could perhaps improve it? I would also be really happy to hear that as well. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. If you want to follow me on social media, you can of course follow me here on YouTube, but you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram as Dyson Demons. So I hope you'll consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!